There's a story that's been circulating for years. It's the story that says the people who succeed are the ones who leave. They leave school, they leave structure, they leave the system, they trust themselves, opt out early, and everything works because they were brave enough to walk away. And whether you realize it or not, the story trains your attention. It subtly teaches you that staying focused is suspicious, that consistency is a sign you're not intuitive enough. And if something feels slow, the answer is probably to exit rather than refine. This episode is about why that story doesn't just mislead people, it quietly dismantles their ability to build anything stable. When you hear that story enough times, you stop asking yourself useful questions. Instead of asking, what system you need to operate from right now, or what would actually help you focus long enough for something to compound, you start asking something else entirely. Like, what should I walk away from next? Because leaving gets framed as courage, and staying gets framed as fear. Over time, steadiness starts to feel like hesitation. Discipline starts to feel like doubt. Consistency starts to feel like settling. Not because any of this is true, but because the story has trained your attention to look for exits instead of structure. And when attention keeps moving like that, nothing has time to build. Here's the part that almost never gets explained correctly. The people we're told dropped out did not leave because they were lost. They didn't enroll because they were chasing success that was marketed to them. And they didn't walk away because structure didn't work. They entered institutions with identity already forming and vision already taking shape. They had specific questions they needed answers for. For a season, they were clients for those systems. They learned how thinking works at scale, how systems operate, and where their own limits and leverage points were. And then, when that phase was complete, they moved into the next one. Not impulsively, not reactively, but strategically. They have an intuitive strategy. They didn't reject learning. They completed a phase of it. And this is where most people get trapped. When this story gets repeated and repeated and repeated, it turns into something else entirely. It convinces people that enrolling is weakness, that staying long enough to integrate is small-minded, and that leaving quickly is evidence of clarity. So instead of committing to a phase of refinement, people keep bouncing between ideas, strategies, and identities, not because they're incapable, but because their attention has been trained to keep moving, keep looking for those exits, keep looking for what's next. And without consistent attention, systems never actually form. And you can't build anything real while constantly resetting your direction. Most leaders I trust didn't escape structure. They learned how to use it. They didn't confuse chaos with freedom, rebellion with clarity, or visibility with progress. They respected their phases. They understood that entering a period of learning isn't about ego or credentials. It's about acquiring the missing piece so the next phase can actually stand. They build lives and businesses that can support the weight of their decisions. And I don't see that as dramatic. It's actually very deliberate. It's focused. It's super mature. That's the part of this myth that matters most. It doesn't just confuse people about education or institutions. It interferes with something far more fundamental, and that's your attention. Because once leaving is framed as clarity and staying is framed as fear and prolonging your success, attention never settles long enough to mature. Nothing compounds there. Skills don't deepen. Judgment doesn't sharpen. Identity doesn't stabilize or even get embodied. You're busy, but you're not building. The real danger of the dropout myth isn't that people leave. is that they leave before they've integrated the embodiment, the identity of what they came for. So if you're sitting in this episode, just notice where your attention keeps scanning for exits and what might actually grow if you let it stay. Because there's no rush, but there is a sequence, and refinement begins when you stop interrupting your own progression.